You guys really need to go back and watch all the Transformers movies. I would say 1 through 4. And it's funny because I found that when you return to something a lot, like when something just, I don't know, reaches out to you and you find yourself coming back to it over and over again in different ways, and it's because there's something there that maybe you're only picking up on a subconscious level. Excuse me. But it is talking to you. And it's funny because at one time I would have considered myself to be somewhat of a snob when it came to movies. I mean, now I just watch stuff. I mean, I to get, if it has information in it, I don't really care, about the technical details, although you'd rather look at something that was well made than not. But anyway, I always poo-pooed those movies. They were Michael Bay movies. I didn't really care. And it wasn't until recently that I really started paying attention to certain elements, no pun intended, or pun intended, within those movies. And I'm telling you right now, there is so much truth in those movies, it would blow your mind. And like I said, all 4, because the 4th one connects to Arthurian lore, and that's also important. It's really interesting that historically, or even like, I don't know, occultically, you always hear about elementals in the context of earth, air, fire, water. Okay? And when I say earth, your mind would immediately go to the rocks, the stones, the trees. Even, what's that guy's name from that movie, The Never-Ending Story? The Stone Biter. When you think rock elemental, that's essentially what that's where your mind would go to. Or even like a golem, like from Kabbalistic lore. But nobody talks about metal elementals. Nobody talks about elemental beings that are composed completely of metal. And I don't think that's... What's up? How you doing? I don't think that's an accident. Noise. I don't think that's an accident. I think that's been obscured specifically for a reason. My mind jumps to images in our collective consciousness. The T-1000 from Terminator 2. The Silver Surfer from Marvel lore. These are metal elementals. Okay? All metal is not, it comes from natural. A lot of it comes in its base form. It comes from natural places. So why wouldn't it be alive? It reminds me of in one of those Credo Mutwa videos where he talks about how in South Africa, because iron is traditionally used in the context of war, they call it the evil metal. But I'm going to get back to Transformers in a second. So there are levels that I believe that elemental entities can operate. There's like a more etheric level, excuse me again, and then there's the more like three-dimensional physical level. And I think sometimes there'll be like a transitory process between the two. For example, I've seen trees that you could see the spirit end or the elemental entity itself, but then, later I would see evidence of that tree kind of making that transition into more physical aspects of existence. Like really weird stuff. Like, I think this tree's trying to walk. But let's get back to metal elementals. Transformers. That's what they are. That's what they are. They are metal elementals. And what's interesting is, in the original cartoon, if you grew up around that time, that's not really like, it was really, this stupid thing, like, they were robots and they looked like clunky robots. And they would just and turn into cars or whatever, the vehicle. But if you look at those Michael Bay movies, they have a very particular look to them. It's a type of quantum shape-shifting process. I think that movie was like been telling you basically what was going on in a lot of ways without saying it. So, and I kind of hate myself for not putting two and two together up until now. I make no secret of it. I've had plenty of experiences where I have run into like cars or vehicles, and I'm like, these things are, it's weird, like it's shape-shifting. And again, your mind immediately goes to technology. I guess if that's, but that's such a, no, I'm talking about living, maybe breathing, metallic entities, possibly stemming from an alloy that either we don't have here or we don't understand how it works. I've also talked about certain metals that they need an energetic, there's an energetic process they have to go through to reach that level. And you start getting into weird things like alchemy, transmutation, stuff like that. So much is kept from us, and we're not told the entire thing. What's really interesting about transforming cars, yeah, I've seen that. So many of these things that are flying around in our skies, if you pay attention, it's like, it looks like a helicopter, or it's not. It's shape-shifting, it's changing. It is this amorphous type of form. And again, I'm not saying that there isn't a technology that does this, but I'm saying, open your mind to the possibility that there are entities that are composed completely of this. Another movie that, and it's like, it's so weird how I was like obsessed with it when I was a kid, but that movie Flight of the Navigator, where that kid was flying around in that ship, like he interfaced with it. That ship was alive, and it was composed of that type of living metal. The spheres, everything that I've been talking about up until now. And what's really funny about the Transformers movies is, if you go by the lore established in those movies, they found because those entities came here a long time ago, but they found the entity called Megatron. I think he was in Antarctica. He was frozen. In fact, yeah, there was an expedition And they found him in the Antarctic. He was frozen. They bring him back, and then they start deconstructing what they found. And that's how you get all of our current technology. But what's interesting though, you're dealing with an elemental type of entity that appears to be metallic or metal. You start incorporating elements of that entity into, quote, your technology, your societal systems and functions. You're bringing the spirit and or the consciousness of that entity into everything. Everything. And I'm not even getting into like, yeah, I'm talking about just even in the context of the movie. Living metal. I had this weird encounter years ago where I saw something and like I was looking on the distance and I saw like what looked like a ship or something, and there was a figure standing outside of it, and he looked like he was huge. He was like, but he looked like he was composed completely of metal. Again, also, The Day the Earth Stood Still. Gort. And like the original one's fine, but go back and watch the remake. Because they really get into the quantum aspects of what Gort was and the metal that he was composed of. He was an elemental. And God, it's so funny that I don't know why I've never put two and two together up until now. I've just always assumed. You think metal, and in our head we think technology. But what if it's something different? What if it's something alive? And it's been around us the whole time. Anyway, that's my rant. Hope you guys are doing good.